Welcome to the TRU Leader Podcast. Today, our special guest is Matt Phillips. Matt was a professional baseball player turned leadership coach. Today, we talk about leadership development and how to have mental toughness. Don't miss this inspiring episode.
Welcome to the TRU Leader Podcast. I'm Dr. Tracy Christopherson.
And I'm Michelle Troseth.
We are life and business besties, leadership coaches and mentors, and polarity intelligence experts. We're the authors of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and co-founders of Missing Logic.
We are here to help high-achieving leaders break through leadership norms that cause them suffering at work and home. If you're looking to elevate your leadership, increasing your productivity, effectiveness, and impact, and manage your health and well-being, spend quality time with those you love, and live your best life, then you are in the right place.
Our goal in this podcast is to equip you with new ways of thinking and practical and tactical strategies for succeeding at work and thriving in life. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of personal and professional development so you can reach your full leadership potential, create a life you love, and be what we are calling a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable or true leader.
If you are ready to learn and laugh a little, let's get started. Well, welcome to another episode of the TRU Leader Podcast. It is Michelle and Tracy.
Yep, here we are.
Here we are.
Just having the best day ever. Set those intentions, folks. That's what it's all about.
Hey, yeah, it is.
Yes, it is. It is. And we set that intention this morning, and man, are we having a great day. So we
are.
hope you are too.
Yes, we hope you are too. And this interview is full of energy and fun, and we just talk everything about leadership and vision and motivation and accountability.
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. Okay, we're done. Yeah, we had a great conversation with Matt today. What a lovely guest. Just full of wisdom and depth and very aligned with us and what we believe about leadership as well. And so it was just really fun.
It was
lively and fun and entertaining and informative. All of those things.
Yeah, you're going to love it.
Can't get any better than that, right? Can't get any better than that. So let us tell you a little bit about Matt Phillips, our guest, and then you can listen to this incredible interview. So as a leadership coach and host of the Matt Phillips podcast, Matt helps sales leaders achieve pro-level performance by developing and harnessing their mental toughness. Having worked with companies including Western Union, Marsh, and Robert Half, Matt knows that the status quo of promoting rock star salespeople to sales leaders often leaves a new leader with significant gaps in their own leadership philosophy, confidence, and resilience. By combining his background as a professional baseball player with his global experience in sales, operations, and accounting, Matt supports business leaders and teams as they break through the mental roadblocks that arise in their daily grind to help them realize their potential in their personal and professional lives. Wow. Go, Matt. So without further ado, here's our interview with Matt Phillips.
And we are here in the studio with Matt Phillips on the TRU Leader Podcast. Welcome, Matt, to our podcast.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, first of all. Second of all, this is our second conversation and super excited to dive in and to just continue that first discussion and really just have some fun today. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. We're all about fun, right, Tracy?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's have as much fun as we can. That's what it's all about.
Exactly.
Little learning, little entertainment, few laughs.
Yeah. And
it'll all be good.
We don't know where this conversation is going to go either. All the more fun.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Well, Matt, I thought I would kick us off, and I just wanted to share with you that, I love working with salespeople, and I've always contributed that to the fact that my dad was in sales my whole life. He was the guy on the road doing sales, and I just learned so much from him. And, when you really think about it, we're all in sales, no matter what we do.
Yes.
And so I was curious if you could tell our listeners why you have carved out a leadership and a sales niche for your business. Like, what led to that?
Yes, it's interesting because I look back at the evolution of my business over the past almost 12 years. It'll be 12 years in a month from now, which is just pretty wild when I really think about it. And the evolution over the years, right, of, I started out, very general leadership, right? So helping different functions within organizations. And that is still true today. I help everything from finance operations, human resources. I mean, it doesn't matter the function. I still work with those individuals, but just what's evolved over time is within that kind of a niche around sales. And, when people ask what I do, I tell them I'm a leadership coach, right? That's the simplest way to describe it. And within that, we focus on the one true differentiator, which we call mental toughness, right? It's the mindset piece. It's that resiliency, that mental strength, whatever you want to call it. But it's what's going on in between your ears that determines the level of success you achieve. And so with that, Michelle, when I've talked to certain groups, when I mentioned the leadership and the mindset piece, a lot of salespeople are just attracted to that. Because like, oh my gosh, like my salespeople need mental toughness, right? Because sales is challenging, right? And I don't care if you're in accounting or finance or operations, to your point, we're all selling all the time. And it's not, used cars salespeople get a bad rap, I think a little bit, but we're not trying to schlep a product or something like that, or, pull the wool over your eyes. It's something like that. We're here to influence people, right?
Yeah.
To share a message, to influence people to make a decision, right? And if we can help them make it quicker or faster, then that's sales, right? Or that's influence. And so it just naturally, the salespeople are like, oh, like just because it's challenging, right? To overcome the fears of asking for a sale, to, have the focus and the diligence to like keep going and prospecting. That takes that mental fortitude to actually do that. So again, we still work cross-functionally, but that's why that kind of niche was kind of carved out, and why that sales kind of piece is so important.
Yeah. Well, that makes total sense, and I think when you are in sales, so much of it has to come from your own self-motivation, and I mean, there's things that drive it, the sales incentives, but so much of it, if it really is that that mindset, mental toughness that you speak about, that can really make a difference in the outcomes and the results. So I totally get that.
Oh, yes. Well, that's back to that whole thing of, it's easy when things are going well. Like we feel really good. We're happy. I'm excited. At least that's the way I feel. I'm like, oh my gosh, like things are just clicking and humming, and I'm feeling good about life and everything. And then when we face that adversity and we have that little down patch, that's when the mindset piece really starts to kick in of like, okay, now what am I saying to myself? Now what do I believe the obstacle is in front of me, right? Am I making this a mountain when it could be a molehill? Am I being really tough on myself with self-talk? And, I've been to a place where, I look and I'm like, man, am I even cut out for this? Is anyone ever going to buy from me? I've used words in the past like, gosh, you suck. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're terrible at this, right? And that's where that mental piece comes in of like, how do we start controlling some of that stuff? And it's not easy. You're going to have those thoughts, but it's the way I describe the mental piece is all we're trying to do is close a time gap from like getting off track to getting back on. And the quicker, because we're all going to get thrown off track. I don't know if both of you ever get thrown off track. I do.
Never. Are you kidding me?
I think that was our conversation this morning.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Well, it's all about having your mind in the game. Like, what kind of day do you really want to have?
Yes.
Because it's all up to you, to your point. It's in between your ears, right?
It's in between your ears,
you can have
right?
a really tough, long, hard day,
yes.
or you can already visualize the end of the day where you're just doing the happy dance. Everything went well and life is good, right?
Yes. And that's the importance, right? If we can, know we're going to get off track, hopefully not that often, but when we do, it's like if I can only be off track instead of like 5 days, it becomes 5 hours. Let's start with that and just work on that. And then let's make that 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then let's, eventually make it 5 seconds. Right. And that's the training that's so important with everything that we're all doing, from like a leadership perspective, from sales, again, doesn't matter what function you're in, or if you run a business or an employee in a company, it's just so important to dive into that mindset piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I like what you were talking about too, when it comes to sales. And I think, just the word has kind of a, in people's minds, a negative connotation to it.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to try to force you to buy something from me. I'm going to weave this around some way. I'm going to hook you in, right?
Yes.
So it just kind of has that connotation to it. And I liked how you were talking about influence, right? And it's not to influence you in a negative way. It's to help you make the best possible decision for yourself, no matter what you're selling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if you're selling a product, a service, a trip, a family vacation,
Yes.
right? Like, I mean, like, to our point, we're always selling, we're always influencing, and so I think because of that connotation, you can get really hung up in your head.
Yes.
Right. About that. So I think, just having that positive mental conversation with yourself, and you're just trying to help people do what they think is going to be best for them, and see what will be best for them, not to coerce them into doing something that isn't in their best interest, right? You're never trying to force somebody. You're always just trying to lead them down the path that's best for them.
Yes. Well, it's that whole, knowing your customer type thing, concept, or know your audience, and that's what's so interesting is we're all so different, right? Because my motivators are different than both of yours, and I'm sure they're different than your listeners, right? Probably some similarities in there, but it's different motivators, right? And we all have different risk tolerances and different ways of learning and thinking and processing information. And so the beauty in influence, and I believe it's something that can be taught, right? Some people are more natural at it. They just like pick it up it's something they're born with, but I believe it can be taught, of just paying attention, asking questions of, like, when you're sitting across from someone, you're trying to figure out what are they thinking right now? How do they think? How do they process information? What risks are they, assessing in their minds right now that I need to be aware of? Call it objections, right? We hear a lot about, this is my objection to this. And again, if we're trying to implement a process at a company, for example, right, or put a process into our business, we're doing the same thing. And we're trying to figure out, is this going to be painful? Is it going to be easy? How long is this going to take to be put into place? How short is it? We're always assessing those things. And by asking a lot of questions around it, having that curiosity, you can find out the way people are thinking. What are they really, or do they need to? I always love asking the question of people, are you a processor or are you an on-the-spot thinker? And it's really fascinating to hear people's answers with that, because if I'm trying to sell something to someone, but they're a processor, I need to allow that space for them to process. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to give you a year and a half to process. It might mean I'm going to give you, can we circle back in a couple of days type thing. And even from really any part of business, it's just asking those questions, that curiosity. I think that something I've learned over time that is really helpful, right? Doesn't mean you're going to close a deal or make a sale or influence someone, but you certainly have a better chance of success with that, I guess.
Right. Well, you work with them and their natural tendencies, right?
Yes.
Rather than working against it, I guess.
Yes. Very true.
Yeah. 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 Well, let's talk a little bit about leadership. And tell me a little bit about why it's important for leaders to really develop their own leadership philosophy. Why would that be an essential element for leaders?
It's a great question. And at its core, I believe if you want to get the best out of your people, you have to craft a vision and set expectations that your employees and team understands so that they optimize their performance, right? And, I love when I meet people for the first time, and I won't put both of you on the spot, of course, but if your listeners, if I were to pretend right now that I walk into your office right now, or maybe we meet for a coffee. Let's go for a coffee because I like coffee. So we meet at a little coffee shop, and we're sitting down and just getting to know each other. And then I ask you this question. The question is, so what's your leadership philosophy? What's your style? And this happens in coffee shops. It happens in interviews. It happens like all throughout the day. But what I found is that in 95% of cases, people either don't have an answer because they haven't really thought about it before, or I get these very cliche answers, meaning like, I have an open door policy. And I'm like, okay, I know what you mean that you have an open door policy and I love it. And I totally get it, but that's not you. That's not like your authentic voice. Like that's you saying something that you read. And it's like, that may be appropriate, but like, let's find something that like drives you and sets those clear expectations. And that's, I believe, if we're going to motivate our people, if we're going to influence them to do work, to maybe work later, all those sorts of things, it comes down to like, this is what I believe, this is where we're going. And this is why I want you involved. And this is the difference that we can make. And then this is what it's going to look like in motion for you. This is what it's going to look in real life to you of what we need to do as a team to be successful. And I think once you do that, people start seeing that path forward and they're like, oh, I see. Now I get what Matt does or Michelle does or Tracy. I get who they are. I get their expectations of me instead of people guessing all day long of like, well, did Tracy really want me to stay late today? Did she want me to like walk really fast in the office to appear busy? Did she want me to communicate a certain way? Instead of this guessing game, it's like just real conversations about like, these are the things that are making us successful. It's kind of shifting that from reactive leadership to proactive and getting ahead of it. Mm-hmm. And everyone's just on the same page, clear, and now we can go operate. That's why I believe it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And there's such a difference when you're following a leader that's a visionary and they know that philosophy, they have that confidence and certainty, than someone who doesn't, so that makes such a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Mm-hmm. What I've seen, in the clients I work with, and we do this, I do it like one-on-one coaching, and I help people build their leadership philosophies. We also have this high performance leadership program, which is an online program with group coaching where we accomplish the same thing. Yeah. And we have people, go through and build it. And then on the group coaching calls, we talk about it. We have them share their screen and we dive into it. And I have so many stories about just like simply sitting down and walking through these 4 steps we take people through. You see their confidence level increase. Mm-hmm. In how they work with their team, communicate with their team, how they interview people. And, sometimes when they're interviewing for that next role, they're just prepared and they're succinct, because inevitably we're all going to get to ask that question when we're either leading a team or going after that next job of talk about your style or your leadership philosophy, all those sorts of things. It's said many different ways. But the confidence that it exudes when you have an answer to that, it's unreal. And people are like, oh my gosh, like I get it. And you don't have to be this crazy visionary. I mean, the Elon Musks of the world and, Sarah Blakely's of the world. And I mean, they are next level, like, holy moly, we're going a direction and I'm just going to ride the coattails. I'm going to hang on as tight as I can, right? And follow those people.
Right.
But the reality is I believe we can do that as leaders. And I see it every single day of just simply writing it out and defining it and talking about it and practicing it. And man, leadership is all about confidence. And that one just small piece of all the things that we teach, like, has such a massive impact on how leaders show up every day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, you mentioned the programs, some of the programs that you have, what do successful leadership programs, include? What are some of those components you're talking about?
Honestly, the biggest thing for me with any program and just as you develop yourself, the word that always comes to mind is consistency. So I know you both believe in that wholeheartedly, but it's, we all want to develop ourselves, but my challenge to everyone is how consistent can you be with it? And some of our programs, like that high performance leadership program, it was birthed out of a whiteboard session that I had. And one of the words I had written on the board was, how do we be consistent in developing ourselves, right? And obviously we take leadership and the mental toughness piece and we combine those in our business. Right. But at the end of the day, it comes down to consistency. So back, I had a long corporate career before I started this business. And I worked for a bunch of massive companies here in the United States and Europe, all these things. And I remember I was pretty hell-bent on getting to the top. I wanted to be the CEO. I had that vision, right? I was that guy where I'm like, oh, how do I get to the C-suite and do all these things? And I was just always looking to develop myself. And I think my athletic background too, just playing professional baseball overseas and, collegiate baseball, things like that. I just have always had this internal drive just to get better and figure it out and lead teams, things like that. It's just something I enjoyed. And so when these companies would offer leadership trainings, like I was the first to sign up. Where I felt like I was first to sign up. Maybe not, but as soon as I saw it, I would sign up because I just wanted to take advantage of these resources that were out there. But one thing that always was challenging was, I do a training 1 month or for a half a day, maybe 3 hours. And then all of a sudden there'd be nothing until, another 6 months. And then like another class would pop up and I'm like, oh, boom, done. Like, let's go. And there was always this gap there. So with this even high performance leadership program, it was birthed out of like consistency. Like, how do we be consistent? And it's ongoing, where, just the way we structured this program, for example, was we have 1 topic per month that we focus on. Mm-hmm. So we release one topic a month, and the whole intention is like have a hyper focus on that topic for the month, for the next 30 days. And then the next month, you're going to get a new topic to continue to develop. And, hopefully you can keep doing that one that you did the month before, but or leverage the power of it. But it's like build. And, you've heard the saying that, sometimes we overestimate what we can do in a year, but underestimate what we can do in 10. Or we overestimate what we can do in a month, but underestimate what we can do in a year. You can say put different time frames on it.
Sure.
But I believe it comes down to like when we train consistently month after month, and then we have group coaching calls every week just to help people get out of their own way and have coaching with me to actually address that. The consistency is going to get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
And I believe that's the biggest thing within any leadership program, of however you structure it, is that consistency has to be there. And it doesn't have to be every month, but it's got to be frequent enough where it actually sticks and it becomes part of your culture. That's probably the biggest component, that the word that sticks out for me when I think about leadership programs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense.
It does.
Well, we're always evolving, right? And we've got to keep evolving and keep growing.
Yes.
You can't let yourself get stagnant and think like I've arrived, right? Because we don't arrive. I don't think we ever arrive, right? It's always ongoing, new level, new devil. We've all heard that one before.
Yes. Well, and so for example, I'm part of a mastermind that you both are aware of. And we just got something in the mail probably about a week and a half ago. And it was a journal. It is a journal. And it's basically 365 days of prompts, of questions to ask. It's one question per day. Mm-hmm. And so the past week and a half since I've had it, I've sat down every day with the exception of Saturday. And I've gone through those questions and reflected. And sometimes people are like, well, but Matt, you've run a business for almost 12 years. Like, well, I believe that I can always get better and grow too. Yeah. So even that journal is super helpful for me just to have a different perspective. And sometimes the questions resonate more than others on the days. Sure. And most do, to be honest. But it's like, man, if I can just get a little extra, I don't know, perspective, or maybe think about something a little bit differently, like you never know the impact it can have. Yeah. And so I just love that as a tool to use to like focus daily on, how do I need to show up? One of the prompts was, how does a CEO of a, whatever $1,000 or $1 million business, whatever it is, show up, differently than when I was a smaller business? Mm-hmm. And it's a really interesting question of like, well, how do I need to show up differently? Or I could ask it a different way from a leadership perspective. Like, how does a, leader of a 20-person team or 50-person team need to show up differently than a person with a 3-person team?
Right.
Like what, and it's interesting just to think about and let your mind go like, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. Well, that's a big part of the work we do too, is right, getting people into their future self. Like you're not going to get where you want to go operating from who you are today, right? You've got to be the leader that you want to be in the future now, right? You got to think like that leader. You got to act like that leader. That's what's really going to help you move forward and get the most momentum, right? So it's questions like that, like if I had reached my goal already, who would I be? How would I be operating? What would I be doing? What would I be thinking? What would I be saying to myself, to your point? What's my mental game? If I'm the best salesman, if I'm the best leader, what's my mental game? Right. And I think that's just so critical to getting forward, because we keep trying to operate from where we are.
Yes.
But that's only got us to where we are. Right. Yep. So
that's very true.
Again, that next level requires different thoughts, different approaches. So this back to the ongoing development, right? That's just you got to develop those skills. Sometimes you got to develop those beliefs. You got to develop those thoughts. So you got to have that consistency.
Yeah. That daily practice is so important. You know?
Oh, go ahead, Michelle. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the daily practice of that is so important to your consistency message.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so true. Well, I think, I love this discussion. Tracy brought up, thinking of your future self and all that. And I don't know if any of your listeners feel this way, but sometimes it's scary to do that. Like one of my goals is I want everyone to know that like we all are having the same thoughts. Right. And when I think even about the future of like, okay, well, I know we're here and I want to go there. Sometimes I'm like, man, is that even possible? And I think it's so important from a leadership perspective to like just sit with that and but yeah, I'm a little nervous about that, or that seems uncomfortable. And I don't know if I like that. Or maybe I do, and maybe I'm excited about it, or maybe I just don't know how to even bridge the gap there. And I think it's so important just to sit with those questions. You don't have to have an answer. I think we put this pressure on ourselves like, okay, well, if I said I'm going to operate from like this, then I've got to make these immediate changes. Like, well, maybe, but it's also that evolution. Like, I can't remember Michelle or Tracy used that word, like that evolution of understand that's where you want to go, and let's start taking little steps to get there. But I think that's the toughest part of like, it's okay if you sit there and doubt yourself a little bit or feel that imposter syndrome of like, oh my gosh, who am I to think I could operate that way or be that type of leader? And it's important to dream about that and then surround yourself with great people to help you do that. Like that's to help show you the path or try things and pivot. And one of the things I wrote in the journal this morning was a concept of, as we evolve, like what type of CEO do I need to be? And we're going to have this flexibility, meaning we're going to go step out and then we're going to pivot as we need to, and pivot quick in a lot of cases, but we're going to step out. That's the first part. And then we'll pivot if we need to. And it's such an interesting place just to operate from. It was interesting. I'm now reminding myself, because you guys in this discussion, you guys reminded me of this. I don't know if your listeners are familiar, or you guys are familiar with the company Alibaba. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's basically the Amazon of China. And I was talking with this American guy who worked for Jack Ma, who's the founder. And Jack Ma's story is amazing, like rags to riches, like school teacher to billionaire when he started this business. So it's a really cool story. Anyway, I was talking to this guy who worked for him for years and years and years and years, really close, like his second in command. And I asked him what it was like to work for Jack Ma. So we're having this great discussion, all these things. And he made this comment that really stuck out to me. He said, the only time I got in trouble with Jack, the only time, was when I wouldn't take enough risk. And I was like, hold on a minute. What? I'm like, I think that's what I said so eloquently, right? I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I said, what do you mean take enough risk? He said, Jack wanted us to take big risks in the business. It could be a process or a product or something like that, right? But his expectation was take the big risk, but you better pivot fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that mentality. It's easy to say.
Yeah.
I think it's challenging to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that of like, let's take the risk, like step out, do this thing. But we're going to have that flexibility, that pivot mindset of, and we're going to pivot darn quick if things are going sideways. And that always stuck out to me as far as that evolution occurs in our business and as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so
Right.
fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. That's a great point. And it isn't, we're supposed to feel uncomfortable, right? It's like we think, oh no, I should be able to just do this. No, to your point, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to feel uncomfortable, because if you're feeling uncomfortable, it means you're stretching yourself.
Yes.
It means you're daring to see yourself in a different way. And that's okay. And
Yes.
sometimes you just got to recognize this doesn't feel good, but it will, right?
Yeah.
It's just like when you're learning something new, you kind of feel a little lost, you're uncertain.
Yes.
It's all the same. It's all the same. Just recognize what it is, but don't let it hold you back, right? Don't let it be, the reins pulling you back. Just recognize it. Just keep taking the next step, right? And just keep building on what you have.
Absolutely.
What your strengths are, right? Lean into what your strengths are and just keep building off of that, right? When you're trying to make some of these major changes.
So true. So true.
Yeah. Well, you talked earlier about kind of setting that expectation, having that clear path, and communicating that with your team. So what are some of the strategies or ways that leaders can help their teams then be accountable to that vision, to that strategy, to that philosophy, to really, be in alignment with it and moving it forward? What are some of those kinds of strategies?
It's a great question. I go back to the leadership philosophy, right? So part of our process that we take people through is establishing how you talk about it, first of all. The second piece is then helping define like what it actually looks like. So it's actually starting to like really paint a picture, if you will, or create a movie and think about it from like, I always get this backwards, like scene 1, act 1, scene 1. I don't know, but whatever it is, but it's almost like this is what it's going to look like in motion. Like let's make it real. Because sometimes we use words that are so general that people we like they think they know what it means, but not really. So, for example, like if I walk in, I'm like, be a great leader today, and then I walk out. People kind of know what a great leader is, but not really. And so they're left with all these questions. So it's like, that's why the philosophy is so important, right? How do we make it real for them? So it's like, one of the examples I always use, I'm a big process guy, meaning I believe, and I tell people on the team this all the time, that we document everything we do. And here's why. Like, one is that it will make sure we understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Second of all, if somebody's out, we can pick it up and actually achieve whatever the thing is and get it across the finish line. Third, and most important, is my philosophy, my belief is that there are always more efficient, effective ways to do things. So that's why every 6 months we're going to sit and dedicate at least 3 hours to go through our process and to find ways to challenge things. So all of a sudden, from like when I'm describing that to people, they're like, oh, okay, I see how this is going to affect me and impact my life. Right. And that's where accountability comes in. So that way people aren't shocked when they start with our business that they get a recurring calendar invite every 6 months for 3 hours. That says process improvement. And so we've got the time set aside. And they're not surprised when I come to them and say, hey, we just did this new thing or new way of doing things. Did you document it? And they're either going to say yes or no. And I hope the answer is yes, because they thought about it. But that's where accountability comes in, right? I've defined it. This is what it looks like. And now you can't be surprised if I ask that question, because I've set the expectation. I've set the bar. Yeah. And then it's my job as a leader to go back to that and constantly go back and say, I just talk about it with people. Like, we talked about this. We talked about this. We talked about this. Did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? In some cases they will. In some cases they won't. But it's not coming from a place of surprise. It's coming from a place of expectations, because they've been set. And again, things evolve and change and all these sorts of things. But if I have the conversation up front and make it real for them, it becomes a heck of a lot easier to have those accountability conversations, right? We said we were going to do this. Right. We agreed to this. Did you do this?
Mhm.
And I'm not being mean about it. I'm not
Mhm.
coming out of left field because all of a sudden I got some crazy idea and I'm like, ooh, let's try this. If I do, let's talk about it first and see if it's realistic and then figure out how we're going to go through this. And then it's just my job as a leader to go have those conversations.
Yeah.
So that's the way I kind of look at that. Hopefully that answered that
Yeah.
question.
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah, we
Sure.
get it.
You live it every day.
Every day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Process and progress, one of our key tension polarities we like to
Yep. it's one of
focus
the-
on.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is. It is.
Yes.
It
Well,
is,
so
yeah.
what are both your beliefs on this then? Because there's trainings out there called like crucial conversations, and
Oh, yeah.
one of my triggers. It's not that bad. It's not really that big of a trigger, but one of the things that
But it is. But it's a
doesn't make me
trigger.
do anything like any bad behavior or
Crazy.
anything. But one of my triggers is when I hear about, well, I have to have a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't like. It's like, why do we have to? My belief is, I'm curious, both your opinions. Why do we label stuff so much? And I label stuff, but it's like, why does it have to be difficult? Why can't we just look at it as a conversation? And we'll prepare for the conversation. And I'm not saying it's going to be the most fun thing in the world, but there's a certain approach we can take to make it a beneficial conversation. Do you guys come across that? Do you both? And
All the
what are your
time.
thoughts on that?
It's actually a great question. It's really core to one of the components of our work when it comes to polarity intelligence is meaningful dialogue. And it's almost, we're very familiar with crucial conversations, but it's almost like, don't let it get to that point.
Yep.
If you have really good communication, if you are very intentional in how you listen to people, if you share your thinking to your point that then there's no surprises, and really, create that place where people feel safe to communicate, then there should be no surprises. And that takes practice. And one of the principles of dialogue too is candor and diplomacy. So how do I bring my truth in a very frank and honest way, and also deliver that in a way that it can be really well received, it's respectful, so that it's just always there. And, so very much we agree.
Love that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because we don't know how to communicate with each other effectively and honestly, to Michelle's point with the candor and diplomacy. And our relationship, we don't have a foundational relationship.
Yes.
So the other part is healthy relationships.
Yep.
It's really, this is the soft stuff
Yes.
that organizations have avoided, right? Let's do the process. Let's get the structures in place. Let's do these initiatives and programs. But it is really fundamentally, it's about relationships with each other and how we're engaging with each other, our intentions with each other.
Yes.
And we're really all about, working with those you lead and those that, lead you to establish those relationships and to
Yes.
say, okay, here's what I believe my roles and responsibilities are in relationship to our relationship and this role that we're discussing, and what my expectations are of you, what I need from you. And I need to know what you need from me. And when we have that clarity, then it's, to your point, it comes back to, here's what we talked about. And I find we have a kind of a partnership agreement tool that we encourage leaders to use with their people that report to them and that they report to. And just to set these understandings, to have it be very clear and explicit, to your point, right?
Yes.
And when you do that, then you kind of have some, what I like to call guardrails on your relationship and how you're going to be together, right?
Yes.
So that you don't go off-roading, right? And you don't go down a rabbit trail or whatever. You kind of know, here's who we are together in relationship to each other, how we want to work together, what we want to achieve together, how we want to communicate with each other. And it kind of helps us know how to navigate our differences and our similarities, our strengths. And then we've got a place to come back to when it's not working.
Yeah.
To say, hey, the last time we met, we talked about this. This is what I said you could expect from me, as an example. And I don't feel like I've been delivering that because of X, Y, Z. Here's some challenges I'm having,
Yes.
right? Or I'm not feeling like I'm receiving what you intended for me to receive from you. So can we just have a conversation? That's not a difficult conversation. That's a partnership conversation.
Correct.
That's a whole different tone, whole different way of thinking, because you have that safe space, right? This is our safe space we're creating with each other. And I know how you want me to be with you, and you know how I want you to be with me. And we're going to use this to kind of navigate.
Yes.
And we don't have that. So then it becomes like, oh gosh, I got to go talk to that person, and oh, what am I going to say, and how am I going to do it, and
meanwhile,
we lose 10 nights sleep over it before we set the appointment. Then we lose 10 more nights sleep before we have it, right? It just becomes this big swirl, right? And
so very true. So very true. But I think that
necessary.
This goes all the way back to that word consistency, right? I love asking, because to do all the things that we're talking about, it literally takes one thing. And that one thing is time, right? So I love asking leaders, and I'll ask all your listeners right now, how much time do you have set aside every week to just think about communication? What's gone well? What didn't? Do you know your people? Do you not? Like, how much time do you have set aside to think about leadership every week or every month? And that's back to that consistency. The more consistent we are in thinking about these things and actually going through and using all the tools that we have, because we all have enough tools.
Yeah.
Or we have tools available to us. It's just like, are we using them? Are we setting aside time to leverage them? And it could be a simple thing as setting 30 minutes a week to think about this stuff. And you don't have to have a defined plan to what you're going to think about. It could be, but it's just think a little bit about you and your team and all the components of it. It's like that simple, yet that challenging, right? Because we're all running so fast.
Yeah.
And it's just in those moments of pause where you're like, oh, that's where the gold is. That's where the gold sits. It's in the moments of pause and just a little bit of time.
Reflection.
Well, it's the balance of being and doing.
Yes.
And we're all leaders. We're doers.
Yes.
Right? We're doers, achievers, high performers. That's how we get to be the leaders that we are. But you have to balance that with the being piece. With the quiet time, with just those moments of stillness and contemplation, to your point, right?
Yes.
And reflection. That's what helps us do better, more effectively, more efficiently. But we're just so much around the task, the next thing, the go. We don't spend enough space in the being. And that's, I think, that's the tension between the two, right?
That is.
If I spend time doing that, then I'm not getting this done, right? But it's like, I could probably get that done differently, better, more effectively, efficiently, if I took the time to be still and think about how I want to lead this, or who's the right person for this, or am I the right person for this, or do we need somebody else, or just what do I need to be giving attention to and thinking about? So
yes, it's very true.
Yeah.
It's like the constant evolution as leaders, right? That uncomfortable position and bridging the gap and
that's what it's
getting out of your own way in a lot of cases. At least that's what I found for myself. Most 99% of the time, it's just me getting out of my own way. And once I do, I'm like, ooh, I should have done that like 2 years ago. This would be much easier that way.
So true. So true. Well, sometimes we just need help getting out of our way. Right? Sometimes we need somebody to shine the flashlight in the dark corners that we're not seeing and flush out the stuff that we can't see ourselves. Right?
It's very true. Yeah, I had a conversation with one of my coaches a couple months ago, and people always are interested in the coaches that I have. And I always tell people, like, yes, I'm a coach, but I also have coaches, right? And you look at, I go back to my playing days, right? Playing collegiately and then professionally. It's like, we always had coaches, always.
Right.
And yes, we were good at what we did, but we always needed people there to guide us and make sure we were staying on task and seeing things that we didn't see.
Yeah. And
that's what I've taken into business now and even with fitness, it's how do I leverage the people around me? And yesterday I do CrossFit. For those of you familiar with that organization, and I grabbed one of the guys who's like one of the trainers yesterday, as a matter of fact, who is really good at gymnastics. And so like anything from the bar and things like that, pull-ups, all these really different movements. And I pulled him aside and said, hey, I'm struggling with these 3 things. And he gave me these drills to work on because he's the expert at it. And I'm like, well, I could try to figure this out on my own, or I could pull the guy, and happen to be a guy in this case, to come over and help me with like, just think through this. And what are the steps for me to work on this thing? And it's like little simple things like that, or me calling my coach and saying like, listen, I'm stuck here for some reason. And you know what the beauty was in this conversation was, he said, you know what? I don't have the answer for you. He said, but you do. And he encouraged me to get in front of a whiteboard. And he said, I want you to get in front of the whiteboard. And the end result is this, that you want the brain to think, how do we get to there? And I just need your thoughts to flow, and nothing's wrong. Don't put a box in, don't fit it in a box. Like, just whatever needs to come out, comes out. Analyze this and that. Just ask yourself questions. And it's little stuff like that, that once I did that, I felt way more calm. Mm-hmm. I felt way more confident. And the solution that I had been searching for was sitting, like, staring me right in the face on that whiteboard. Mm-hmm. And it's just little things like that, that's where I think coaches and just mentors are super important, to see things you don't, or give you that prompt to go do that thing that you probably know you should do, but you're just not. You need the little kick in the behind every once in a while to be like, just go do that thing, would you?
Just do it.
And it's amazing, the results that kind of come from that. That's the power of just what you both do, and the coaches that I have, and the conversations that people I surround myself with, or try to surround myself with, and asking questions. It's underrated, but my gosh, the value is incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I really appreciate the analogy to athletics. Like, people don't think anything about athletes having coaches, but I think we're not in the same place when it comes to leadership. So this is why today's conversation has been so good. Yeah. We all need coaches.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
Well, are we having fun? Have we met our objective in having fun so far?
I have had fun. I thought it was great.
I'm enjoying it. That's all that matters, right?
Okay, we'll meet every week. Let's just meet every week, and we can stimulate each other.
I always joke with, I was in Florida 2 weeks ago with one of my clients, and it was the whole leadership team, and we did a full day, leadership training with them, and had a ton of fun with it. And I walked up to someone before, and this is the 4th year I've worked with this company, and so I know them all pretty well. And so I walked up, and she's like, "Oh, you ready to go?" And I'm like, here's the only thing I can guarantee. I'm going to have fun. The rest of it, I don't know. It's up to you guys. So I'm going to have a good time. Right. That's all I can guarantee, But
that's all right.
But that's the thing. It's like, enjoy what you're doing. It's laugh a little bit. Like, I don't know, just bring a little positivity to what you're doing every day. And, I believe that's one of the successes, like secrets to success of leaders. It's just show up with more positive energy than the person next to you, across from you, on the Zoom from you, on the Teams from you, like whatever it is. If you just show up with a little more positive energy, it's infectious, and
it is.
You want to be around that.
Energy is the key word.
Oh yeah, you don't have to. It's not song and dance and like doing something fake that's not you. It's just let's do some good things today, and that energy feeds the whole business, the whole process, the whole team. It's just such a small thing, but massive difference.
Yeah. Well, we've come to the time in our show, Matt, where we get to ask you a couple of mystery questions so that our listeners who are leaders can get to know the true you. So I'm going to ask the first one, and then Tracy's going to ask the second one. So we noticed on your LinkedIn that you have a son that plays hockey.
Yes.
And you stated that you are in heaven watching him play. So tell our listeners one reason why you love to watch your son play hockey.
I will make this statement for all 3 of my children. So I'm going to expand it. So I've got the hockey player who's in the middle, and he's bookended by 2 girls. So a 18-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old daughter, and they are both volleyball players. And then the youngest plays tennis as well. So I will answer this with all 3.
Okay.
Or for all 3. The thing I love most about watching them is watching them step and become the people that I know they can be. And just to see that glimpse of like them just doing something in the game or practice, or where you start to see these little steps put together and they come into their own, and that confidence that they build within themselves. And that's what I love most about just watching my children grow and just develop into great people. And that's my hope, and that's my prayer, and that's my wish for them. But for me to be able to watch that is so, I don't know, it gets me unbelievably excited to just watch and see them become little people. It's amazing. So they're people, but, they're still people, but it's just that growth that gets me most excited.
Yeah.
Great. That's awesome.
Yeah. I can relate.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. It's really cool to watch them evolve and step into their capacity, right? And their potential. And yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. Okay. Question number 2.
Yes.
Who has had the most positive influence in your life and why?
Oh, I immediately go to my mother. I had great parents, still do. My father passed away 10 years ago, and my mom still just lives 3 minutes away, which is awesome. My mom was my teacher twice growing up, once in 4th grade, once in 8th grade. And yes, if everyone's asking, I called her mom. I didn't call her Mrs. Phillips. So I didn't make it too uncomfortable, but she would drive my sister and I to school every day because of that. And growing up, she would not let us get out of the car unless we said out loud, I like myself, I'm happy, I'm going to have a good day. And this is from a very young age. And I remember that. And some days I was just like, come on, this is lame. And Mom, come on, just let me get out of the car, stuff like that. And she didn't force us. She didn't like tie us down until we said it. It wasn't anything like that. But she knew early on, and I don't think she even knew what she was doing, but she was setting the tone for the day for us, right? And it was a couple things. One is like, I'm going to set the day. I'm going to have a good day. It's like, okay, let's make it a good day, right? I'm setting the tone for the day. But I like myself and I'm happy. And I think that's where I wish every child would say it. I wish every adult would say that today, because the belief we have in ourselves is everything. And my mom knew that. And she wanted us to approach things from a level of confidence that I love myself. And then, I'm going to screw up and do all these things. And some days are good and some days are bad. And some moments are good and some moments are bad. But I'm going to choose to like myself and I'm going to choose to be happy. And I always remember that, that she made us do. I'll say made us, even though I think we kind of liked it, towards the end, right? Of course. But before we got to high school, but it's that little stuff, right? It's setting the tone.
Yeah.
And she's had a massive influence beyond that, but that's a story that really sticks out about her that was a positive influence for me.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. I love that.
Thank you, Mrs. Phillips.
I know.
And look at you now.
I know.
Look at you now.
Look at me now. Look at me go.
Look at you now. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. That's really wonderful. Well, it's just been such a joy. Such a pleasure to have you on the show today. And I'm sure we'll be doing this again. I just have a feeling we'll be talking again in the future. And
I hope so.
I just really appreciated all your perspectives. And
well, no, I just thank you for what you both do. And I know you'll keep it alive and you're impacting lives. And, for all the listeners too, like we have this opportunity, I believe, right? As cliche as this sounds, I think we have this opportunity to positively impact people.
Yes.
And if we can either say, give somebody a smile or help them through something or just have a conversation with people, our impact, although we may never know it, can be absolutely massive. And that's why I applaud you, Michelle and Tracy, for doing what you do. And listeners, I challenge you to keep doing that too, because you're doing amazing things, even if you don't necessarily see that end result. And so that's my wish and kind of hope and prayer for everybody on the listening today.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Matt.
My pleasure. And thanks for having me again.
Yeah. And where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn guy. So it's Matt Phillips 15, Matt Phillips 15. You'll see is my little handle on there. You can obviously go over to mattphillipscoaching.com mattphillips.com and check out kind of what we do and how we help. And then really, let me give you I'll give you something different here. If you go to mattphillipscoaching.com/metrics, so you're like, metrics? Well, part of leadership is knowing your numbers and becoming comfortable with numbers and talking about numbers and all these sorts of things. So we put this little cheat sheet together that gives you a bunch of different metrics, and it's a heavier sales focus. There's a leadership portion to it as well. So you can go to mattphillipscoaching.com/metrics and sign up and grab the cheat sheet and just start honing your love of numbers, because that's going to make you a better leader. So, boy, I don't know if people want to hone their numbers, but darn it, there you go anyway. That's the best way to connect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a detail thing, right?
It's a detail thing. It is.
We just laugh because Michelle's not details. I'm details, right? We're a walking polarity. So she's the exact opposite of each other when it comes to our preferences for different things in business. So, anyway, I love the metrics piece. That's great. Thank you for that gift to our listeners.
I'll get it, Matt. I'll get it.
Good.
Someday,
Good. Yes.
Someday, Michelle is going to be the queen of metrics. I just
Success right there. Success.
It's going to happen.
I love it.
Well, it's been wonderful. Mm-hmm. And okay, listeners, thank you for being here. We really appreciate you.
Yes.
If you have some, great takeaways from this session, then leave us a message on our YouTube channel or our LinkedIn channel, and certainly share it with anybody else you think would benefit from it. I think it's been a great conversation with a lot of wisdom shared. And don't forget to, subscribe. So you don't want to miss any of these incredible podcasts that we have and the incredible guests that we have the privilege to talk with. And if you like video, check us out on the YouTube channel. And until next time, stay safe and stay healthy.